I never thought the people who gave me life could make me feel smaller than anyone else, until they raised their hands in front of my daughter. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Laura Quinn. I'm 29, and I have a beautiful 5-year-old daughter named Emmy. My parents, Derek and Marlene Quinn, were supposed to love and protect me. But that night, everything changed. I had gone to their house for a small visit, hoping we could have a normal evening. Instead, they started arguing with me over money, my life choices, and even how I raise Emmy. The words alone were sharp, but then Marlene slapped me, and Derek pushed me to the wall. Emmy was standing right there, watching in silence, her little eyes wide with fear. I didn't scream. I didn't hit back. I stayed calm, holding Emmy close. Inside, I felt a storm of anger and hurt, but I knew my silence was my shield. I left their house that night, taking Emmy with me, without saying a word. I didn't want them to see me cry or feel scared. Over the next weeks, I quietly started gathering proof of everything they had done wrong, financial lies, manipulations, and even threats they had made toward me over the years. I kept my distance, stayed strong, and planned carefully. When the time was right, I used all the evidence to protect myself and Emmy. They couldn't deny it. Their lies, abuse, and control were exposed. Suddenly, the people who thought they could dominate me had no power at all. I finally got full custody of Emmy, and my parents were left facing the consequences of their actions. I didn't need to fight back physically. My patience, planning, and silence did the work for me. Now, Emmy and I live peacefully. She knows love and safety, and I've learned that sometimes, the strongest revenge is rising above those who hurt you. I had always trusted my parents with everything, but that night, they betrayed not only me, but the bond one had with my daughter. Stick with me. It started small at first. Derek and Marlene would comment on every decision I made, from my job to how I cared for Emmy. I thought they were just worried, but slowly, their concern became control. That night, they crossed a line I could never ignore. They insisted I let them make choices about Emmy's life, threatening to go to court if I refused. Their voices were harsh, demanding, and full of judgment. Emmy clung to me, trembling, sensing the tension in the room. Looking back, I realized this wasn't new. They had undermined me for years, questioning my relationships, criticizing my career, even mocking the way I managed my finances. Each little betrayal had chipped away at my confidence, and I hadn't noticed until it all came crashing down in front of my daughter. I felt a mix of anger and heartbreak. The people who were supposed to support me were actively trying to take control of my life. Emmy's quiet fear made everything worse. Her small hands held mine tightly, and I knew I had to stay strong for her. That night, I made a decision. I wouldn't let their manipulations continue. I would find a way to protect Emmy and myself without losing my composure. The betrayal hurt deeply, but it also sparked a determination inside me. As I watched my parents' faces, I realized they underestimated me. They thought I would bend to their will because of guilt or fear, but Emmy and I deserved better. That night marked the beginning of me taking control, setting boundaries, and reclaiming the power they had tried to steal from us. From that moment, their manipulation stopped having any hold over me. I silently vowed that Emmy would never see us weak or helpless, and that their betrayal would not define our lives. I didn't scream, I didn't fight back, and they thought I was broken. They had no idea my silence was building a storm. Stick with me. As my parents yelled and pushed their opinions onto me, I held myself steady, keeping my voice quiet and my hands calm. Emmy watched closely, and I knew any sign of panic would only frighten her more. So I breathed, stayed composed, and let their anger hit the walls without responding. Inside my mind, a plan began to take shape. Every word, every shove, every manipulative comment was noted and stored. I thought about the ways they had tried to control me for years and how each tactic could be used against them if I played it smart. I pictured the documents I would gather, the witnesses who could confirm their lies, and the small details that would eventually reveal their true selves. I reminded myself constantly that Emmy needed me calm, not shaken. Showing fear would only give my parents the satisfaction of seeing us weak. I kept my emotions locked away, channeling them into careful observation and strategic thinking. Every smirk, every accusation, and every threat was a piece of the puzzle I was quietly assembling. Their confidence made me smile inwardly. They assumed my silence was submission, but I knew it was preparation. I wasn't defeated, I was simply waiting for the right moment. With Emmy beside me, I felt a quiet strength I had never acknowledged before. By the time I left that evening, I carried more than just a calm exterior. I carried a plan, proof in the making, and the knowledge that restraint could be more powerful than any outburst. My silence wasn't weakness, it was the first step toward reclaiming control and protecting the life Emmy and I deserved. Sometimes the people closest to you are the ones you must outsmart the most. Stick with me. After that night, I realized I needed more than patience. I began quietly recording every instance of their control and aggression, keeping notes about the lies they told and the ways they tried to manipulate me. Each conversation, each warning, each subtle threat was carefully documented. I also started looking into their finances and personal dealings, uncovering inconsistencies and secrets they assumed I would never notice. I paid attention to how they treated others, their neighbors, and even distant relatives. Everything became a piece of evidence that could one day protect Emmy and me. I set up a small system in my home to track these details without drawing attention. My parents had no idea I was collecting proof of their manipulations. Every smile I gave them, every polite nod, was part of keeping up appearances while silently building a case. I also began small actions to shield Emmy from their influence. I rearranged our schedule to minimize contact, kept conversations light when they were around, and made sure Emmy never saw them take advantage of me again. Each move was deliberate, calculated to keep our lives safe and to prepare for the moment when I would finally take control. It was empowering to realize that I had strength they could not touch. While they thought I was fragile and easy to bend, I was quietly turning the tables. My focus was clear: gather proof, stay invisible, protect Emmy, and prepare for the moment when I could finally confront the reality of their betrayal. Even in silence, I felt a growing confidence. I wasn't just surviving, I was planning, learning, and building the power I needed. For the first time in years, I understood that intelligence and caution could be far more dangerous than anger or confrontation. It hit me one night: they weren't untouchable. Their arrogance was their weakness. Stick with me. I had always assumed my parents were untouchable, that their influence and money made them invincible. But one evening, while going through some old papers, I stumbled across a series of documents they thought I would never see. There were hidden accounts, and signed contracts, and notes about assets that were technically mine. My heart raced as I realized they were planning to take control of my inheritance, trying to secure it before I could even assert my rights. For the first time, I understood the full extent of their greed. It wasn't just about control over Emmy or criticizing my life, it was about stealing the security I had worked for. They had assumed I would never question them, that I would simply accept their plans without resistance. Their overconfidence was glaring, and I knew I had an opportunity. Without letting them know, I started quietly seeking legal advice. I spoke to a lawyer who specialized in family and financial disputes, learning what evidence would matter and how to protect my daughter's future. Every phone call, every meeting, was done in secret. I had to be careful. If my parents suspected even a hint of what I was planning, they would tighten their grip even more. The knowledge of their schemes ignited a new resolve in me. I felt a sense of clarity I hadn't experienced before. I wasn't just reacting anymore, I was preparing to act. Their arrogance, which they had always worn like armor, had left them exposed. And for the first time, I felt confident that I could protect Emmy and myself while turning the tables on the people who had tried to betray us. That night, I went to bed with a renewed sense of purpose. Their power was an illusion, and I had found the cracks. I knew it was only a matter of time before their plans unraveled, and I would be ready when it happened. All my life, I was taught to forgive them. That night, I realized forgiveness was their favorite trap. Stick with me. As I sat in the quiet of my apartment, memories I had buried for years began to surface. I remembered the times they humiliated me in front of relatives, how they belittled my achievements, and the constant pressure to conform to their expectations. Seeing Emmy's frightened eyes that night brought all of it back in vivid color. I couldn't let history repeat itself, not for her, and not for me. I started connecting the dots between past abuses and the control they were trying to assert now. Every insult, every hidden threat, every financial manipulation became part of a pattern I could no longer ignore. I realized that their idea of forgiveness was a tool to keep me compliant, to make me feel guilty for standing up to them. Carefully, I began planning my response. I listed the incidents, wrote down the ways they tried to dominate both me and Emmy, and thought about how I could reveal the truth without putting ourselves at risk. I imagined a strategy that would protect my daughter, reclaim my independence, and hold them accountable, all without giving them the satisfaction of seeing me lose my temper. I also rehearsed conversations and scenarios in my head, figuring out how to stay calm while letting their deceit be exposed. Each step was deliberate, a way to turn their manipulation back on them. I wanted them to understand that their control was gone, that their favorite tactic of guilt and fear would no longer work. Even in that moment, I could feel the shift inside me. Anger had transformed into focus, fear into strategy. I knew the path ahead would take patience and precision, but I was ready. My silence, my careful observations, and my planning were all laying the groundwork for the moment when I would reclaim what was mine and protect the future I wanted for Emmy. I let them think they won, while I quietly prepared the move that would ruin everything they relied on. Stick with me. For weeks, I kept up the act. I smiled, nodded, and acted compliant whenever my parents tried to push their plans. They thought I was defeated, that I would bend to their will. But behind closed doors, I was assembling everything I had gathered, documents, records, and notes that exposed years of manipulation and deceit. I started using the very secrets they had hidden from me against them. Every financial misstep, every false claim, and every attempt to control Emmy became proof of their wrongdoing. I presented the details to my lawyer, making sure each piece was airtight. Step by step, I built a case that couldn't be ignored or dismissed. Meanwhile, I filed for legal guardianship of Emmy. I worked to gain control over her finances and daily care, ensuring that no matter what my parents tried, they would have no power over her life. It wasn't easy, and it required patience and careful planning, but I stayed focused. Then came the subtle shift. I noticed their confidence beginning to waver. Small hints of panic crept into their conversations and gestures, though they had no idea why. They assumed I was still the same person who would quietly obey, completely unaware of the evidence stack that had been steadily growing against them. Every day, I watched as their sense of control weakened, knowing that soon, the truth would surface. I had waited for this moment, quietly turning their own arrogance into my advantage. They believed they had trapped me, but it was they who were now walking blind into the consequences of their actions. By the time the first legal notices reached them, I had already secured Emmy's future. I didn't need confrontation or arguments, the strategy one had built in silence did all the work. And in that calm, calculated strike, I finally felt the balance shift in our favor. They laughed at me in my silence, until every lie, every betrayal, came crashing down on them at once. Stick with me. I scheduled a meeting with my family attorney and invited a few distant relatives I trusted. It was time to show the full truth. I laid out the evidence I had collected, hidden accounts, manipulative letters, and records of behavior that no one had seen before. Each piece revealed a side of my parents that had been carefully hidden from everyone else. As I spoke, I could see disbelief in their eyes. Derek and Marlene had never imagined that anyone else could witness the reality of their actions. The calm I had maintained all this time made their reaction even more striking. They couldn't argue, and their attempts to deny the facts only made them look worse. I detailed the financial mismanagement, the schemes to control what was rightfully mine, and the patterns of emotional abuse that had shaped my life. Even small incidents from years ago were presented, showing a consistent pattern that could no longer be ignored. Every lie, every betrayal, and every manipulation was laid bare. By the end of the meeting, it was clear that my parents' reputation had crumbled. Relatives who had once sided with them were shocked, and even my attorney remarked on how thorough and undeniable the evidence was. Their influence had evaporated, and the control they had relied on for so long was gone. Soon, the consequences began to take shape. Financially, they faced legal scrutiny. Socially, the relatives and acquaintances who had trusted them now questioned everything. The image they had carefully built for decades fell apart in hours. I watched quietly, knowing that this was the result of months of patience, planning, and silent determination. Finally, I felt a weight lift. The people who had underestimated me, who had thought I would bend to their will, were now facing the reality of their actions. And Emmy and I could finally step into a life where we were safe, respected, and free from the shadows of their control. In the end, I didn't need to hit back. My silence, my patience, my strategy, that was enough. Stick with me. The final court hearing was the moment everything changed. I was granted full custody of Emmy, ensuring she would grow up in a safe and loving environment, free from the manipulation and fear that had haunted us for years. The relief I felt was indescribable. For the first time, I could truly breathe and focus on rebuilding our lives. My parents were ordered to pay restitution for the financial damage they had caused. Their actions, once hidden behind a facade of respectability, were now exposed to everyone who mattered. Friends, relatives, and neighbors could see the truth, and their family name, carefully maintained for decades, crumbled under the weight of the evidence I had collected. Standing in that courtroom, I felt a sense of calm strength. Every plan, every careful step, and every moment of restraint had led to this point. I didn't need confrontation or anger to succeed. My determination and strategic thinking had spoken louder than any argument ever could. For Emmy, this victory meant stability, love, and safety. For me, it meant reclaiming control of my life and proving to myself that I could overcome betrayal without losing my integrity. I finally felt closure, not just legally, but emotionally. The fear and doubt that had followed me for years melted away, replaced by confidence and resilience. That day, I realized that true strength isn't loud or forceful, it's quiet, patient, and deliberate. By holding on to my calm, by trusting my instincts, and by acting with precision, I had turned a painful betrayal into a complete triumph. Emmy and I could now look forward to a future filled with hope, freedom, and the knowledge that we had survived, and thrived, despite everything. I taught my daughter one lesson that night: silence is power, and strength isn't always loud. Stick with me. Looking back, I can see how far we've come. Every moment of fear, every sleepless night, every hidden plan shaped the life Emmy and I have now. What once felt like endless pain has turned into empowerment. I learned that enduring hardship doesn't make you weak, it can teach you strategy, patience, and resilience. Emmy watches me with trust and admiration, and I realize that protecting her meant protecting myself, too. I've grown into a version of myself I never knew existed, calm, confident, and unshakable. The toxic hold my parents once had over us is gone, replaced by freedom and a sense of control I fought hard to reclaim. We've started building our own traditions, our own happy moments, without fear or manipulation. I've discovered the value of setting boundaries, trusting my instincts, and standing firm when others try to diminish me. Each day, I feel lighter, more capable, and more in charge of the life I want for both of us. Even now, I think about that night and the lessons it carried. Strength isn't always about confrontation or loud declarations, it's about careful thought, deliberate action, and knowing when to wait for the right moment. Silence, when used wisely, can be the most powerful response to betrayal. As I look at Emmy, I wonder how many of us underestimate our own power when we stay calm and plan carefully. The path wasn't easy, but it led us to safety, dignity, and peace. And I can't help but ask, if you were in my place, with your child depending on you, would you have the patience and courage to stay silent, gather strength, and reclaim your life? Our story isn't just about revenge, it's about reclaiming what was taken, protecting the ones we love, and discovering the strength we never knew we had. Do you think I did the right thing by standing up to my parents, or should I have tried forgiving them again? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe and hit the bell.